people going to hit the streets again this weekend. Which people are demonstrating at the retreat and everywhere else. So that's a good thing. Thank you, Manny.
Yeah.
Appreciate you. Folks, it is Black History Month, and a lot of women were named as African-American historical figures you admire in our Friday morning fights this morning. Shirley Chisholm, primarily, and Harriet Tubman's name came up a lot, Sojourner Truth's name came up. A very special guest joining us now. So I want to, we're back up on our stream as well. Twitter.com/MakeItPlain, Facebook.com/MakeItPlain, and also on YouTube, Make It Plain. And what I'd like to do is begin this way, because I want people to appreciate this. I'm going to show you now the trailer and let you hear the trailer from this film that is right on time. Please, if you're watching us on the stream, take a watch and take a look. And if you're listening, of course, as I know you are, take a listen. PBS American Masters.
Serious drama that has at least the objective of making a larger statement about life, I think sooner or later has to become involved in its time.
Lorraine Hansberry is hugely important for having written A Raisin in the Sun, the most celebrated play by an African-American author, considered one of the great plays of the 20th century.
I'm looking in the mirror this morning and I'm thinking I'm 35 years old, I'm married 11 years, and I got a boy who's got to sleep in the living room because I got nothing, hey? Nothing to give him but stories.
She was reaching into the essence of who we were, who we are, where we came from.
It isn't as if we got up today and said, what can we do to irritate America?
Lorraine was a very political person. Her plays, that to me is her jumping off place.
She's fighting the oppression of women. She's fighting against race discrimination, poverty, class.
Lorraine wasn't just a conventional mainstream liberal. Lorraine was a left-wing radical.
It really doesn't matter whether you're talking about the oppressed or the oppressor. An oppressive society will dehumanize and degenerate everyone involved.
Among all the women I knew, she was the most exciting.
As a middle-class Black woman, Hansberry was supposed to live a conventional life. And certainly in her early years in New York, she was not living a conventional life.
She's living this kind of parallel life and writing about it.
Lorraine became like part of my consciousness. She seemed to know something about everything. She was a profound thinker.
Lorraine was this new moment on the horizon. She set a whole new paradigm, a whole new stage for what we could now begin to expect of America and what we could begin to expect of ourselves.
Sighted Eyes Sing Heart on PBS. Sighted Eyes Feeling Heart, I'm sorry. Part of the PBS American Masters series. Joining us now, the filmmaker for what you just heard. I'm glad we were able to share that with you. Tracy Heather Strain is with us now. Tracy, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's an honor to have you with us. This has been a labor of love for you, hasn't it?
Yes. I've worked on this film. We officially count it as 14 years, but I've actually been thinking about and wanting to do a film about Lorraine Hansberry for much longer.
Tell us how this came to be for you. How did you get involved? What inspired you to take on her story?
Sure. When I was 17, my grandmother, who had been a domestic during when I was younger, took me and my little sister to see the play To Be Young, Gifted, and Black. And, think about it this way. I was born in 1960, and my grandmother lived, kind of block-busted a street, and we were living in the suburbs, and she wanted to get her granddaughters into town and see some culture. And To Be Young, Gifted, and Black was this play that was created after Lorraine Hansberry died, using her words, and not only from her diaries, but some of her works and unfinished works. And Lorraine just hit me like a thunderbolt. I had never encountered anyone who was young and black and female who seemed somewhat like me, who spoke about things about race and class and noticed things about the human beings. And I was just a fan immediately, like a lot of people who hear her words. And she kind of just stayed in the back of my mind. And years later, after I graduated from college and started seeing a lot of independent films, I kind of took up Spike Lee's call, this notion of make black films, and suddenly Lorraine Hansberry just kind of came back to my consciousness, and I started doing a little research and left the field that I was in and became a filmmaker, an entry-level position, but worked my way up so that I could eventually make a film. I didn't really expect back in the 80s that I would really be the first person to make a feature documentary about Lorraine Hansberry, frankly.
Yeah. Well, and that's it's good that you are. I know what you mean when you say that. It's good and bad.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
because
I agree.
There's still so many of our icons who have not been portrayed and films been made about. But right. God obviously put you here to answer that call and to make it happen. And we heard from all of the people that were speaking. And sharing just her importance. But in your own words, talk to us, if you would, about the importance of Lorraine Hansberry.
Lorraine Hansberry is important in so many ways. One thing I'd say first is her whole story represents a long view of the civil rights movement. Mm-hmm. We like to sort of, here we are in February, we're touting out all the black projects, right? But there's also this notion that people only want to talk about civil rights. And when they talk about civil rights, they only want to talk really from like Brown versus the Board of Education to like maybe the death of Martin Luther King. That was the golden age. But that's not really the civil rights movement. That many of us subscribe to this long view that started way before Brown versus the Board of Education. In fact, Lorraine Hansberry herself says, at the end of the film, I have a quote of her. Since 1619, Negroes have tried every method to basically change their situation. But if you look at her personal story, her parents were activists. They were civil rights activists in the 20s and 30s, trying to change things for African Americans. So she was grounded in this environment where it was their duty to try to change things, and this is something that she carried with her for the rest of her life. It relates to why I titled the film Sighted Eyes, Feeling Heart, because there's this idea that she was someone who saw things going on and felt that it was a person's responsibility to try to do something about it, to change things.
There was also, and you heard some of the people talking, there was something very... and the title describes it too. Something about her where she could really see what other people couldn't see, and see the value in others, those who were around her. She was very blessed and gifted, wasn't she?
She was. She really was. She was one of those people that was very verbal. It's not just that, oh, you speak well. She really absorbed information. Her sister described her as a little sponge. She could read things and see things and take it in, and with her interactions with various people who shaped her, was able to come up with a really insightful analyses that were really ahead of her time. I mean, most of the things she has said works perfectly well today, and she had this gift of prescience.
866-99 series, as we talk about the life and work of Lorraine Hansberry. I guess one of the other tragedies too is that the old saying, "Only the good die young." Her life was cut so short, wasn't it?
Yes. So A Raisin in the Sun burst onto the scene on Broadway in 1959, and she died of cancer just 6 years later. So we never really got a chance to see, and she was only 28 years old when The Raisin in the Sun burst on the scene in Broadway. So we really never got a chance to see what she was going to become and how she was going to develop, and where her life was going to take her and take us with it.
Indeed. Tell us a bit more about how she became a playwright and what it was like. I mean, that's not just something you just up and decide to do and walk down the street and do and be successful at here in New York on Broadway. That just doesn't, that just doesn't happen. How did all of that come about? How did she get in that position?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting mix. She saw plays when she was younger on the South Side of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
She came to New York she took a few theater-related classes in college at the University of Wisconsin, but she actually left after 2 years. But the classes she took were more like production classes, and she did props on a play here or there. But then she came to New York, and she was working at Paul Robeson's newspaper, Freedom. And at Freedom, here you have Paul Robeson, who's an internationally acclaimed singer, actor. He was on Broadway in Othello in the 40s. She's working with Alice Childress, who's been on Broadway, who is also an activist. She was in Anna Lucasta. So she's working at Freedom with artists and activists and people who are already involved in the theater, and she's living in New York at a time when American theater is coming into its own, as one of our interviewees says. And so she decides this is the medium for social change for her. And she leaves the newspaper and basically sort of teaches herself how to write plays. She sits there and does sketches, character sketches, and writes down all these ideas in her head. And one day she sees a play. We tried to figure out which play it was, but it made her very angry because it wasn't an appropriate representation of African Americans. She tells her husband, I'm going to write a play that basically represents black people, and honestly. And so then we get Raisin in the Sun. Her friend, Phil Rose, who she knew from the left, decided after the first reading of the play that this thing needed to be on Broadway, and he made it his business to make that happen.
Wow. Folks, we're just about out of time on the radio. I've got a couple of more questions for our guest. So join us on our stream, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Make it plain to continue our conversation with Tracy Heather Strain. But just also, I think it's important to point this out. You deal with her sexual orientation, correct?
Yes.
In the film. Talk to us about that, if you would.
Yes, so it's been out there in the world for some time. It's been published in books that Lorraine Hansberry was secretly a lesbian, a married lesbian for most of the time. She was married. She secretly got a divorce in 1964, a year before she died, but no one was aware of that. And she was living the secret life, and it was. People always ask me, well, was it a big decision to include it in the story? And for me and the team, we wanted to tell a story of a whole person, not just an icon that you don't understand how complicated and layered one's life can be. You put people on pedestals and say, oh, look at this person on the list of black firsts. And it's important for people of all backgrounds, especially young people, to understand that someone like Lorraine Hansberry had this complex life that included her sexual life, which she had to keep secret.
Yeah. So the film has it already showed on PBS, or it's going to show this month?
It premiered on television on the 19th of January, but it's available for free streaming right now on pbs.org.
That's what we want to do. Yeah, we want people to go to pbs.org.
Mm-hmm.
And these documentaries, quite frankly, on PBS are always great to watch and learn from. And this one in particular, the story of Lorraine Hansberry's Sighted Eyes, Feeling Heart, I couldn't help but notice. It is one of the individuals I think who worked on this with you. Was it Jackie Jones?
Jackie Jones was at the National Black Programming consortium, which is now called Black Public Media, when she gave us one of our earliest grants.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we just recently lost Jackie, didn't we?
Yes, she passed away. I think it was Sunday.
Yeah, I had heard about that and was quite sad to hear about that as well. So God bless her.
Yes, she was a great champion of this project. Even before I applied for money, she's like, this has to happen. She saw the importance of getting Lorraine's story out into the world. And people will be surprised about the story.
Yeah, Tracy, thank you for doing this. We need this, and people need to know about Lorraine Hansberry's work and just what a beautiful person that she was. Thank you so much for doing this, okay?
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for saying that, and thank you for having me on your program.
And so what else, what's next for you? What else are you going to be working on?
Well, I want to do more with the material. I have so much material. I did over 30 interviews, and I only, like, if you count a yardstick of all the interviews, I only have 2 inches in the documentary. And a lot of people we interviewed told great stories about their own lives, more things about the left. There's just so much rich material that I'd like to share, so I have to start raising more money.
Yeah, that would be great. And we'll look forward to that from you. And anything we can do to be supportive or promoting, please let us know. I'm at your service, okay?
Okay, thank you so much.
All right. Take care now.
Take care.
And happy Black History Month.
Thanks. Happy Black History Month to you, too.
All right. Take care now. Tracy Heather Strain. Be sure to watch Sighted Eyes, Feeling Heart on pbs.org. Ladies and gentlemen, make it your business to do so, and make sure all the young people know about the great Lorraine Hansberry. I even get a little emotional thinking about her. Folks, we'll be ready for the weekend. Hope you have a great one. We'll be back with you on Monday. If all minds are clear, it has been made plain.